Welcome to Jill on Money, powered by the Compound. Hey, what's your number? It's not your sleep number. What's your number? Like, what do you need to feel financially confident in your ability to retire? What's your retirement number? Well, we're going to talk about that. I'm your host, Jill Schlesinger. I'm joined by my executive producer, Mark Talercio. Hey, Mark.
Hello, Jill.
What's your number, dude? Do you have it?
Well, if you're in your 20s, you should have 3 times your salary. If you're in your 30s, you should have 6 times.
I hate those.
And if you're in your 40s, I think it should be like 10 times.
Okay, here's the thing. I hate those numbers.
Me too.
All of those very easy shortcuts, I know that as human beings, we want them. I just think basically they're crap. Each of us has a different number.
Mhm.
So your retirement number is based on a variety of variables, right? So let's think about the most important thing. How much money do you spend today?
That's it, really.
Right? Like, what do you spend today is probably the most important thing to get your arms around. Not what the value of your portfolio is, not about your asset mix, not whether you own crypto or not. What do you spend today? And, by the way, when I was an old school financial planner, like decades ago, we used to presume that people would spend less in retirement. I think
Mhm.
that's off the table. Just presume that when you retire, you're going to spend the exact same amount of money that you spend today. We'll inflate that number. Don't worry. We'll apply an inflation rate to it. But if you don't know how much money you spend today, we cannot determine your retirement number. Okay. So Mark, next variable that we talk about is when are you going to retire?
Yeah, those are like the 2 main ingredients. How much do you spend and when are you going to retire?
Now, the thing is, I believe a lot of people will say things like this to us. They'll say, you know what? I'm just going to work for the rest of my life. What's the problem with that? Why is that an issue?
Things come up. You might not be able to work for the rest of your life, and you may not want to work for the rest of your life. Things change.
Yeah. And not only that, we interviewed an expert on retirement, Teresa Ghilarducci.
Yeah.
She wrote an amazing book. I'm going to just give her a quick plug here. So it's Work, Retire, Repeat. And the thing that she made me aware of is how many people plan to work longer, but they can't. And so it's not just that you are in a physical job, but maybe you were in a white collar job and you get axed at the wrong time.
You might not have a say in the matter.
So what we try to explain to folks is your retirement plan can't just be, I'll work till I die. So we're going to pick some number. Let's do a starting point. Why not start at 67, which is your full retirement age when it comes to claiming Social Security? So you're going to say, here's how much I spend today. I'm going to retire when I'm 67. And here's how much I'm saving every year. Here's how much money I have. You're going to plug this into any run-of-the-mill retirement calculator. Most retirement calculators are going to have an inflation number that's plugged in. What do they usually use at this point, Mark?
Well, I was just looking at one the other day, and it was using 2.5.
Yeah, I wouldn't use 2.5. Just to be safe, I would use a 3% inflation rate just in case, okay? We know that we went through this inflationary surge and we are coming back down when it comes to the inflation rate, but just for the heck of it, let's say 3%. Now, the other piece of this is, what are you going to earn on your investments?
Oh, that's the other part of this calculator I was looking at. So it had 2.5 for inflation, and for the returns, it was using 11%.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that is aggressive.
I mean, I guess if you're 100% in stocks, that would be maybe,
Oof.
But I would rather err on the side, at least for these kinds of calculations, let's err on the side of being a bit more conservative. So let's say that you're a growth investor, that you're 70, 80% in stocks and, 20, 30% in less risky stuff like bonds and some cash. Let's run this as a growth investor at 8, maybe 9. And then let's say if you're more of a balance, 50-50, 60-40, why not run it at 6 and see where you end?
I would say the conservative approach is always better.
Well, I mean, I like the conservative approach because at least when you start today, you can just keep running the numbers. And if you're doing better than you had expected and you're ahead of schedule, you can make different choices in the future. Your retirement number may be better than you expect. So, Mark, let's say you run the numbers, your 67 number comes back and it's like, Mark, you're rocking it. What's the choice then? Maybe you say, let me pull the number back. What does it look like at 65? What does it look like at 62? And run these numbers. I would just be careful about running it in a more aggressive fashion to make your life plan work.
Yeah, that's not always going to work out that way.
Yeah.
Don't just run it and say, "Oh, yep, I'm going to plan for these high returns. This is going to be possible." Don't do that. But also, don't forget to factor in Social Security when you
It
do
will,
this.
but will most calculators factor Social Security in or not?
Yeah, usually you got to kind of go into the details to factor that in. Doesn't always have it as a default. Sometimes you got to poke around and add it.
So I would actually add it in some way, shape, or form. It may
Yeah, for
not be
sure.
100% as, what you think it's going to be, but it's, a plug number would be great. And you can go to ssa.gov or My Social Security and get yourself a record that you can use on an ongoing basis. Mark, what do you think is the problem with the retirement number?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to the first thing you brought up was how much do you spend? I think a lot of people don't realize what they spend on a monthly basis, and they're not quite sure how to capture that information. It's really not hard. It's just a matter of figuring out your budget and what's going out and what's coming in, but people really struggle with it.
I think that if you really don't want to track it, and I know there's a lot of people who it's like keeping a food diary, like it
Yeah.
feels agonizing to do that. One thing to consider is this: to say, okay, wait a second, I know how much money I bring home,
Right.
right? That's my take home pay.
I know how much is going into retirement savings.
I know how much is going into retirement, and I know how much I save after that.
Right.
And now you back that out and say, okay, that's probably about my spending.
Divided by 12.
Divided by 12. Thank you very much. And if you want to pad that number a little bit because you feel like, well, that's my monthly spending, but I also take a really fancy trip a couple times a year, throw that number in. And I think you'll be surprised to learn that, you can get your arms around the number pretty quickly and maybe just track it for 90 days and see if you're about right. And I think that, again, erring on the higher side of those expenses is smart. Don't forget, a lot of people want to say, well, I'm not going to have to pay for this or I'm not going to have to commute, but there are healthcare costs, these unreimbursed healthcare costs, there's out of pocket, there are things that are going to happen to you, and you've got to factor that in. And
especially if you're retiring early, because you got to factor in healthcare.
Yeah, exactly right. So if you want to know what is my retirement number, I'm going to look at you and say, it depends. Depends on who you are. So go run your own numbers. You are not lazy people. That's the thing. I know people who subscribe to this channel. They're not the kind of people who are just want to take a back of the envelope calculation from some big investment house, 10 times your salary, 2 times it. That's not for you. You are engaged. Let's run the number and do it once a year. And if we're wrong and you're too conservative, guess what? You get to have more options in the future. And what's wrong with that? If you want our help in assisting you in finding out what that retirement number is for you, go to our website, jillonmoney.com, click the Contact Us button, and write us a note. As always, you can subscribe to us here and leave comments. So if you've got a question here, we'll be happy to answer it in the future. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.